Sexual harassment at work will become a dismissible offence and politicians will no longer be exempt from key legislation as part of major reforms to combat bad behaviour. Live to political reporter Andrea Crothers. Andrea, the PM unveiled the plan today. Of course, in terms of politicians being not exempt, of course, the PM was still essentially indicating it'll be up to the voters to turf them out.
Yeah, it's certainly a far more complex one, but we do know today is that the Prime Minister has formally responded to that Respect at Work report by Sex Discrimination Commissioner Kate Jenkins. They've formally accepted 55 recommendations in whole, in part, as well as in principle. We are still looking through the details of that right now. The Government has just released their full response to that online. But we do know what the centrepiece of it will be, that suite of major legislative reforms. That includes changes to the Fair Work Act to actually broaden the definition of serious misconduct to include sexual harassment, making it a sackable offence. It also includes changes to the Human Rights Act, providing more time for victims to come forward before a complaint can be dismissed, as well as amending the Sexual Discrimination Act, removing that exemption for judges and MPs and public servants. So the consequences for politicians certainly to be more complex.
So it is about getting everybody as much on the level playing field as possible. You're right to note that members of Parliament find themselves in a different situation because of the nature of how we come to be in these jobs. We have one boss, and that is the Australian people who elect us, and that is a process that we'll have to work through carefully in the drafting.
The consistency of definitions, the consistency of approaches is a theme that runs through our response. Our response is focused on prevention, is focused on having a system that is simple to access for victims of harassment, simple to access for employers who want to address harassment in their own workplaces, that is evidence-based, and also that is in conformity with the legal system, the principles of justice as we know them.
The Government hopes to introduce that legislation by June. It's also promising to provide and develop more education and resources for employers about understanding the new cultural changes. But this particular report, it found that 39% of females and 26% of males had experienced sexual harassment at work in recent times. The Government has been accused of dragging its heels on the matter. It did receive the report last January, and whilst it did adopt 9 recommendations in October, it's taken until now to finally provide that full response, and that comes after months of the mistreatment of women dominating the headlines.
There is no doubt that the events of recent months has, as I said, reinforced the significance and highlighted it once again, and the frustration that I think that is felt. But I think the response itself is reflective of our principles as a government and our values as a government, which I would argue is enduring.
While this will be a national approach, the Government has made it clear it expects states and territories to also respond to the report. The issue, no doubt, will be talked about at National Cabinet tomorrow, Tom.